Welcome to the Thriving Through Change podcast, where menopause isn't the end of something, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Each episode, we bring in real life insights to help you better understand what's happening in your body and what you can do about it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thriving Through Change newsletter, or podcast rather. I am your host, Carrie Brown, and this is our first episode. And we are super excited to be here to be creating this podcast. And it's really been a labor of love up until this point, and there's been a big learning curve to kind of figure everything out. We are very new to this. We've never made a podcast before, so lots to learn with the technology, the audiovisual side of things. So I hope I look good and sound good to you all. And then just me personally sitting here talking in front of a camera is not something I've done very frequently in the past. But here we are and we're ready to go. But we're super excited, and all of the work we've put into this podcast so far in our eyes is so worth it. We plan to talk about some really important topics over the coming months and hopefully years. The purpose of the Thriving Through Change podcast is to simply educate women on all things menopause, hormone health, and just overall whole body health. And our topics won't always be on the nose, menopause, and hormone focus. For instance, our topics in the past with our newsletter have been ones like weight management, stress management, bone health. When you take a look at those topics, they seem kind of all over the place, but really there is a clear link between the topic. When you take a closer look, you'll find that for the most part, these changes that occur within the body and the symptoms that arise within these topics, they can all be linked back to, for the most part, to the hormone changes that occur in women within menopause as they go through menopause. And that's kind of our goal as we move forward and as we build up topics. And as you, as the listener, kind of expand your knowledge base, our goal is to create that nice, clear picture of wellness and vitality, always kind of connecting it back to hormone health. And menopause is such an important topic. It can affect a woman's uh, work performance, her relationships, her confidence, and her mental health, and even serious long-term health outcomes. And every woman experiences menopause, but every woman experiences it a little differently. There's so much variability in the symptoms that arise, in the age that these symptoms are showing up in women, at what age they show up, and the severity of symptoms. And because of this variability, women can oftentimes feel overwhelmed and confused. They may find themselves comparing themselves to their peers that are experiencing menopause a little differently, or maybe menopause it isn't hitting them as harshly. Women can be dismissed by healthcare providers who aren't taking their unique symptoms seriously. And there's so much conflicting information online. There's conflicting information about who's a good candidate for hormone replacement therapy, how best to navigate menopause, on the risk of hormone therapy, and so on. So much chatter and almost bad noise, a lot of fear-inducing content out there. And that's something I never really want to do with my patients in my consults, nor on this podcast or in our newsletter. I never want to instill in you any unproductive fear, because really there is a fine balance between learning to recognize the negative signs and symptoms of menopause so you can advocate for yourself, but not getting so wrapped up in the stress and the anxiety of not understanding what's happening in your body, so much so that you can't function properly. And the reality is you're not broken. You know, your life didn't end just because your ovaries stopped working. It may feel that way. Menopause is extremely hard, but the good news is we have solutions, we have tools to make things better. And that's really what the mindset I want to instill through this podcast and within the Thriving Through Change kind of network, I want this to be a place for real, practical, evidence based conversations. I want it to be a space for empowerment and for knowledge. So, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about and define the landscape of peri and postmenopause. So, first off, perimenopause. Perimenopause is that transition period leading up to menopause. And perimenopause can last for quite a while. It's characterized by declining ovarian function. So, what we can see there is declining hormone levels, especially of estrogen and progesterone. Also, oddly enough, we can see very unpredictable and erratic fluctuations of these hormones. So, this is oftentimes where symptoms start. So, perimenopause typically starts in a woman's 40s, can be as early as the late 30s, but typically the 40s. And again, can last for a while, years. Anywhere between 4 to 8 years, perimenopause can last, could be shorter, could be longer. And again, symptoms start here. We can see irregular periods, worsening PMS symptoms. We can see sleep take a turn for the worst. We can see mood changes and hot flashes arise, and the list goes on. And because symptoms start here, this is oftentimes where we treat with, for instance, hormone replacement therapy. And so that's menopause or perimenopause, rather. And then we have menopause, postmenopause. And that is where a woman goes 12 consecutive months without a period. So at this point in time, your hormones are no longer fluctuating in that erratic nature. Your hormone levels of estrogen and progesterone more so hit a low point and they stay low for the remainder of your life. And for a lot of women, or not a lot of women, some women, the symptoms can improve once you hit menopause and go into postmenopause. And that's because the fluctuations are gone. But for other women, the symptoms can last much longer. There's a lot of variability in that way in how long the symptoms stick around. So, uh, again, every woman is different. So, it's very important that we treat every woman as a unique individual. The treatment plan and the duration of treatment may look very different from one woman to another. So, I just realized I got to this point and I haven't really introduced myself formally or my team formally. So let's take some time to do that. Again, my name is Carrie Brown and I'm a pharmacist. And I've worked with Hawthorne Pharmacy for quite a while. I started with them prior to pharmacy school and I stayed with them throughout pharmacy school. And then I got hired on as a technician or as a pharmacist after graduating. And I very quickly landed in the compounding lab where I went through a pretty strenuous certification program to become a hormone specialist. So within that hormone certification program, I learned how to manage women on hormone replacement therapy, how to help guide them through menopause. So I meet with ladies all day, every day, just like you. And so that's me. I wanted to also introduce my other team player on the Thriving Through Change network, and that's Miss Allison or Mrs. Allison. She recently got married. So Allison does everything behind the scenes. So everything from the technology, getting the technology set up, understanding again that all this audio visual stuff, putting out content, formulating posts, prepping for these podcasts, and making sure we're all set up. I kind of sit here and I talk in front of a camera, but she does literally everything else. So she's amazing, and I appreciate her very, very much. Um, so we're kind of the two direct team members for Thriving Through Change. I also wanted to take some time to kind of highlight the rest of our compounding team. So there is within the compounding lab a whole team of technicians and pharmacists that kind of keep the operations rolling every day. They're the ones who are filling your prescriptions, compounding your hormone replacement therapy. They talk to you on the phone, they talk to you at the counter, they answer your questions. Me and Allison do that to an extent, but they kind of keep everything running so that we have time to do great things like this, like set up a podcast. And I also recognize that us building that patient base through our compounding pharmacy and our consultation program even kind of gives us the platform and the audience for us to even have anyone to do this podcast for. So I really appreciate everyone. And it's a huge team effort, a huge team endeavor to set up this podcast and provide for you menopause information and hormone replacement therapy. But it's so important that we listen to women, that we listen to their chief complaint, that we recognize their symptoms so that we can treat her as an individual accordingly. A lot of times the symptoms of menopause are attributed to aging or stress. A woman may be told, hey, you feel this way, and it's just a consequence of getting older. But you don't have to accept that. We don't have to accept that. You, as a patient, don't have to accept that. And there are solutions, there are tools like hormone replacement therapy, for instance. Hormone replacement therapy does great things for lessening the signs and symptoms of menopause, improving quality of life, and even offering protective benefits, long term health benefits. Hormone replacement therapy can help with longevity and protect your bones, your brain, and your heart. Tons of great things. But I tell my patients, and I'm not going to lie to you, hormone replacement therapy alone is not enough. In my consults and on this podcast, we also plan to express the importance of improving lifestyle. So, lifestyle improvements, things like nutrition optimization and the importance of scheduling daily movement within your day. So, those are super important as well. We know that. Those lifestyle improvements remain crucial within menopause. And what I've seen with my patients and my consultation program is I can start you on hormone replacement therapy. We will work together to optimize dose and formulation, but you'll always have the absolute best outcomes when you combine that HRT with diet and exercise. The simple fact is, for you to be your most successful throughout menopause, you really do have to put in the work. So let's move over to some housekeeping and go over what to expect from future newsletters and future podcast episodes. So to start, let's talk about the Thriving Through Change newsletter. So the Thriving Through Change newsletter will drop into your inbox on the first of every month. And each month will have a different topic that is relevant for aging women as they go through menopause. And within each topic, we'll discuss what's changing in your body, why it's changing. We'll offer lifestyle advice to, again, help you promote overall wellness. We'll also give supplement sales, have OTC supplements of the month. We'll offer announcements on upcoming events. So those are all the things to expect from the newsletter. And that's something for you to enjoy and read on your own or with friends. And then we'll come about a week later to have this live cast episode. And the purpose of the podcast, the live podcast, is to delve more into the topic, to expand on the topic. And it also gives you an opportunity to ask questions. That's a big reason why we chose to film this podcast live, is we want you to ask questions. So that's what you can expect from the live. I'll kind of talk at the beginning, give my 2 cents on the topic, delve further in, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. Obviously, we're streaming on YouTube, so when we open up the Q&A, you'll be able to type in your questions. I'll answer them, and you'll have an opportunity to kind of pick my brain. I also want to mention that within each newsletter, you will see a calendar invite for the live stream. So you'll click on that link, add the event to your calendar or your virtual calendar of choice, and that'll help you remember to attend the live. But if you can't attend the live, you don't completely miss out on the content. we will be posting a recorded version of the podcast later in the month. I think that recording is going to be released around the third week of every month. So that's also an option. You will be able to enjoy the recorded podcast. I also want to mention that within the newsletter, there will be a link for you to submit questions ahead of time. So let's say, for instance, you're reading the newsletter, you have a question, but you know you won't be able to attend the live. You can submit your question ahead of time, and you can refer to the recorded podcast later in the month to see your question answered. So that's kind of the natural progression of the content each month. You'll have newsletter, live podcast, and then the recorded podcast later in the month available. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. There's a few other things. Next, we have a private Thriving Through Change Facebook page. So within that private Facebook page, or the purpose of that Facebook page, is to create community among our listeners. So obviously, with the newsletter and with the podcast, we are talking to you, we are communicating to you, but we want you to have an opportunity to communicate with each other as peers. So within that Facebook page, we encourage you to ask questions of one another, give advice to each other when appropriate, and just post good things. Celebrate or post your accomplishments, your triumphs and whatnot, and let other people celebrate and congratulate you. That's really what we want out of the Facebook page. Again, we want to create that community among our listeners, among our patients. We want you to realize that you're not going through menopause and life alone. So that's the Facebook page. Then we also have a members only page on our website. So within that members only page, you'll see exclusive deals, exclusive content, and we'll also have the podcast recordings there as well. But I'll wrap things up here. We're super excited to be doing this podcast, to have you here with us. I will maybe go ahead and introduce next month's topic. So stay tuned next month for the July edition of the newsletter and of the podcast. We'll be discussing probably one of the most bothersome symptoms of menopause, which is hot flashes. So stay tuned for that. We're super happy you're here, and we look forward to working with you.